The rain had been falling for hours, tapping against the broken trailer roof like impatient fingers. Inside, Oliver sat awake on a thin mattress, listening to water drip into a dented metal bucket beside him. His child slept beneath a faded blanket, curled tightly against the cold, unaware of how close their world was to changing. Oliver looked around the cramped trailer. A backpack, 2 changes of clothes, a nearly empty box of cereal, a photograph from the home they had lost. 3 days earlier, an eviction notice had been nailed to their front door. Oliver pulled the blanket higher and whispered, "We're going to be okay." He had spent years believing hard work could protect his family. Now he couldn't even keep a dry roof above his child's head. Then came a sharp crack. Oliver froze. A section of the trailer wall beside him trembled. Dust drifted down. Another crack split the silence. The panel suddenly collapsed inward. Oliver stepped back as rotten wood scattered across the floor. Behind the broken wall was darkness, deeper than the narrow space between the trailer's outer shell and its interior. Something metallic caught the faint light. He crouched and reached into the opening. His fingers touched cold, rusted metal. Oliver pulled out an old metal box, small enough to fit in his hands. Mud and dust covered its surface, but beneath the grime, he could see a strange marking carved into the lid. His heartbeat quickened. Why would anyone hide a box inside this trailer? He could barely finish the thought when bright headlights suddenly flooded through the cracked windows. Oliver turned toward the door, his breathing shallow, his eyes fixed on it. A vehicle had stopped outside. His child stirred beneath the blanket. Oliver quickly pushed the metal box beneath the mattress and stood perfectly still, listening for footsteps. Whoever had arrived wasn't expected, and Oliver knew there was no reason for a stranger to stop at this forgotten trailer tonight. And somehow, Oliver felt they might already know what he had just found. 6 months earlier, Oliver believed his life was ordinary. His house was small, but it was warm. His child's drawings covered the refrigerator, and Oliver had enough. Then everything began slipping away, one piece at a time. A medical emergency drained his savings. When his work hours were reduced, Oliver started using credit to keep the mortgage and household expenses current. He sold his old truck and took extra shifts whenever available. Still, the numbers kept growing. He could have protected himself, but Oliver kept choosing his child first. School expenses came before his mortgage. Food came before his own needs. When the final eviction notice arrived, he stared at it before folding it carefully and putting it away. He refused to let his child see him break. His relatives offered sympathy, but little else. Some said they couldn't help. Others suggested Oliver had brought the situation upon himself. So he found the broken trailer. It was old, rusted, and barely livable, but it was the only place he could afford. Oliver told his child it was temporary. He said they were going to rebuild their life. Deep down, he wasn't sure they would ever escape. There was one thing he had never understood, though. His father. They had been estranged for years before his father died. Oliver never learned why his father had pulled away, why he refused to explain certain matters, or why he left Oliver with so many unanswered questions. But one forgotten memory suddenly returned. Oliver was 17, standing beside his father beneath the old oak tree behind their home. His father had looked unusually serious. "If life ever takes everything from you," he had said, "remember where you came from." Oliver had never understood those words. Until now, sitting in that darkness, sitting inside that broken trailer, with almost nothing left, he began to wonder whether his father had been warning him about something. Something Oliver had been too young to see. Morning arrived beneath a pale gray sky, but Oliver barely noticed the daylight. He had slept little. His mind kept returning to the broken wall, the hidden box, and the vehicle that had disappeared before dawn. Once his child was awake and eating breakfast, Oliver returned to the damaged section. Something about it bothered him. The trailer was old, patched, and poorly maintained. Every wall showed the same layers of cheap material and faded paint. But this section was different. Behind the broken panel was older wood, darker with age, reinforced in a way that made no sense. Oliver ran his fingers across the boards. Someone had added this wall later. He found a screwdriver and began removing the panels one by one. Each screw resisted, before finally giving way with a sharp metallic squeal. Then the space behind the wall opened. It wasn't empty. A narrow compartment had been built between the inner and outer walls. Oliver stared at it, barely breathing. He reached inside and pulled out a rusted metal box. The same box he had discovered the night before. This time, with daylight filling the trailer, he could examine it properly. The lid was scratched and stained, but the lock still held. Oliver searched the compartment again. His fingers found something wrapped in brittle cloth. He pulled out an antique brass key. Beneath it was an old photograph. Oliver wiped away the dust and stared. It showed his father standing beside a house Oliver had never seen before. There was one final object, a sealed envelope. The handwriting across its front stopped Oliver cold. He knew those letters. He had seen them on birthday cards, old documents, and the few notes his father had left behind. It was his father's handwriting, but that wasn't what frightened him. Written across the center, beneath the faded crease, was one name, Oliver. His hands began to shake. His father had been dead for years. There was no reason this letter should exist inside a forgotten trailer. And yet, somehow, his father had known Oliver would eventually find it. Oliver stared at the envelope, suddenly afraid to open it, because whatever was inside had been waiting for him. Oliver broke the seal with trembling fingers. The paper inside had yellowed with age, but the handwriting was unmistakable. His father had written it years before his death, yet every word felt as though it had been waiting specifically for this moment. Oliver read slowly. His father knew there might come a day when Oliver lost everything. He knew life could strip away a home, money, security, even pride. But he had also prepared for something else. Someone close to the family had tried to steal something valuable, not money, a property. His father had hidden it before anyone could take control of it, protecting the evidence and ownership records until the truth could safely reach Oliver. Oliver's heart pounded. Why hadn't his father simply told him? The letter offered no simple answer. Instead, it gave him a location, followed by an old family name Oliver barely recognized. Beneath that was a set of instructions. Find the old property, look for a particular door, and find the keyhole. Oliver immediately looked at the antique key lying beside the letter. The pieces suddenly seemed connected, but the letter still refused to tell him exactly what he had inherited. His father had deliberately left that discovery for later. Then Oliver reached the final paragraph. He read it once, then again. His face tightened. Trust no one who tells you the property was never yours. For several seconds, Oliver couldn't move. The sentence changed everything. This wasn't a sentimental letter from a dead father trying to reconnect with his son. It was a warning. Someone had tried to erase Oliver's inheritance. Someone had lied. And if the person responsible was still alive, they might have a reason to stop Oliver from finding the truth. A sound came from outside. Oliver turned sharply toward the window. Nothing. Only rainwater sliding down the glass and tall grass bending in the wind. Still, the memory of headlights from the previous night returned. He folded the letter carefully and slipped it inside his jacket. The broken trailer suddenly felt different. It was no longer simply the place where Oliver had been forced to sleep after losing everything. It was the place where his father had hidden a secret. And somewhere beyond it waited a property that might have been Oliver's all along. By afternoon, Oliver was standing at the edge of a forgotten stretch of land, several miles outside town. If his father's letter had not given him the location, he would never have noticed it. The property looked worthless. Tall weeds swallowed the fence, thorny vines covered the trees, and the ground was littered with broken branches and stones. Oliver almost laughed. This couldn't be the inheritance. He pushed through the vegetation, following the faint outline of an old path. Every step made him question why his father had sent him here. Then he saw it. A corner of something dark protruded from beneath the earth, near a cluster of trees. Oliver brushed away leaves and soil. Metal. He cleared more dirt until a narrow door appeared. His pulse quickened. The door was almost completely buried, and there was no visible handle. Only a small keyhole sat beneath layers of rust. Oliver slowly removed the antique key from his pocket. It fit perfectly. He turned it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then came a deep metallic click. The door opened inward. A stale breath of cold air escaped from the darkness beneath the ground. Oliver switched on his flashlight and stepped inside. The narrow passage opened into a surprisingly large underground room. Wooden boxes lined the walls. He approached the first one and lifted the lid. Old photographs. The next contained financial records. Another held property maps, receipts, contracts, and documents bearing dates from decades earlier. Oliver picked up one map and spread it across a wooden table. The boundaries marked on the paper matched the land above, but something else caught his attention. A company name appeared repeatedly throughout the documents. Oliver had never heard of it. He searched through another box. There it was again. Then he found a valuation document. His eyes widened. The land beneath his feet had once been valued at millions of dollars. Oliver stared at the number, convinced he had misunderstood it. The abandoned property he had almost dismissed as worthless had once been considered extraordinarily valuable. And if these documents were genuine, his father hadn't brought him here to show him a forgotten piece of land. He had brought Oliver to the beginning of a secret. A secret someone had worked very hard to bury. Oliver spent the next hour surrounded by documents, trying to understand what his father had built in secret. The records revealed a pattern. Years earlier, his father had quietly acquired several properties and placed them under a legal structure designed to protect them from creditors, lawsuits, and even certain family members. Oliver traced the names across the paperwork until he found something that made his hands stop. His father's name appeared beside another. Oliver. He read the line again. He was listed as the primary beneficiary. For years, Oliver had believed his father had left him almost nothing. Now, hidden beneath layers of forgotten records, was proof that his father had planned otherwise. The inheritance was larger than he could have imagined. There was the abandoned land. There were additional parcels scattered across the county. And there was a commercial property in the city that had increased dramatically in value over the decades. Oliver leaned against the table, overwhelmed. This could change his child's entire future. But then he found something wrong. One of the official records showed that ownership of the properties had been transferred away from his father shortly before his death. Oliver's expression hardened. He compared the dates. The transfer appeared legitimate. The signature looked convincing. But another document told a different story. His father had been seriously ill during that period. According to the medical records, he had been unable to conduct business personally. Oliver's breathing slowed. Someone had transferred the properties without his father's true consent. He searched deeper. The same company name appeared again, connected to the mysterious transfer. Suddenly, the strange warning in his father's letter made sense. Trust no one who tells you the property was never yours. Oliver looked at the papers spread across the table. This wasn't an inheritance that had simply been forgotten. Someone had interfered with it. Someone had taken something that his father intended Oliver to receive. And if the records were still hidden after all these years, Oliver had to ask himself the most frightening question yet. Who else knew where these documents were? Before he could answer, a faint sound came from somewhere outside the underground room. Footsteps. Oliver froze. Someone was approaching. Oliver returned to the trailer just before sunset, carrying the documents beneath his jacket. He was already thinking about how to organize everything when he noticed the door. It was slightly open. Oliver stopped. He distinctly remembered locking it. He stepped inside slowly. Nothing appeared missing. The few possessions he owned were still where he had left them. His child's blanket remained on the mattress. The metal box was untouched. Then, Oliver saw the envelope. It was sitting on the table. He had left it hidden beneath his jacket. Someone had searched the trailer. Oliver's eyes moved toward the window. Fresh tire tracks cut through the wet ground outside. He stepped onto the porch and followed them with his eyes. A black sedan was parked near the road. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out. He looked to be in his 50s, dressed in an expensive dark coat that seemed strangely out of place beside Oliver's broken trailer. "Oliver?" Oliver said nothing. The man approached slowly. "I know what you found." Oliver's stomach tightened. The stranger explained that the property Oliver had discovered had nothing to do with him. He said old documents could be misleading, and family stories could become distorted over time. Then he made an offer. A large amount of money, enough to pay Oliver's debts, buy a new home, and secure his child's future. All Oliver had to do was walk away. For a moment, Oliver imagined what that money could mean. No more leaking roof, no more fear of eviction, no more explaining to his child why they couldn't afford something. But then he remembered his father's letter, and the words written across the final line. Oliver shook his head. "I don't want your money." The man's expression changed. The friendly tone disappeared. "You should reconsider." Oliver stood his ground. The stranger stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Some things are better left buried." Then he turned and walked back toward the sedan. Before getting inside, he looked over his shoulder. "If you keep digging, Oliver, you could lose more than money." The car disappeared down the road. Oliver remained standing in the rain, watching the taillights vanish. His fear was real, but beneath it was something stronger. Determination. Someone was afraid of what Oliver might discover, and that meant he was getting closer to the truth. Oliver knew he couldn't investigate alone anymore. The following morning, he took the documents to Marcus, an old family friend who had known his father for decades. Marcus spread the records across his dining table and studied them in silence. At first, neither man spoke. Then Marcus pointed to a ledger. "There's a page missing." Oliver leaned closer. The ledger jumped from one transaction to another, leaving an unexplained gap between them. They checked another document. The signature looked like Oliver's father's, but Marcus immediately noticed something wrong. "The ink is different," he said. Oliver felt his stomach tighten. They compared dates against old medical records. One transfer had supposedly been authorized by Oliver's father while he was hospitalized and physically incapable of signing anything. The more they examined, the worse it became. The property transfer wasn't simply suspicious. It was impossible. Oliver stared at the papers as the pieces finally came together. His father hadn't lost the properties. Someone had taken them. Someone had created a false trail, hidden the original records, and waited for the truth to disappear with him. Oliver suddenly understood why his father had been so careful. He hadn't been protecting money. He had been protecting proof. But Marcus wasn't finished. "There is one document we still need," he said. Oliver looked up. The original inheritance agreement. Without it, everything else could be challenged. The forged signatures could be dismissed as old paperwork. The property records could be disputed. Even the hidden documents might not be enough to establish Oliver's legal claim. Oliver closed his eyes. Then he remembered the letter, the strange instructions, the warning, and the location that had brought him to the hidden room. His father had written that the final proof was hidden somewhere no one would think to look. Oliver's mind returned to the trailer. The broken wall, the compartment, the old metal box. He suddenly wondered whether he had stopped searching too soon. If someone had built that hidden space deliberately, perhaps the first compartment wasn't the real hiding place at all. Oliver stood. He looked at Marcus. "The trailer," he said quietly. Marcus understood immediately. Oliver grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. The missing agreement was still somewhere behind those walls. And this time, Oliver knew exactly what he was looking for. Oliver returned to the trailer with Marcus's words still echoing in his mind. He locked the door behind him and stood quietly, staring at the damaged wall. The first compartment had revealed the letter and key. But his father had been too careful to leave everything in one place. Oliver began searching again. He checked beneath the mattress, inside the cabinets, behind loose panels, and beneath the old table. Nothing. Then he noticed something near the floor. A thin metal strip was partially hidden beneath a warped floorboard. Oliver knelt. He pried the board loose. Beneath it was another concealed opening. His heart began pounding. This compartment was far larger than the first. Inside sat a small wooden case covered in dust. Oliver lifted it out and placed it on the table. A tiny lock secured the lid. He already knew which key to use. The antique key slid perfectly into the lock. Click. The case opened. Oliver stared at what was inside. Original inheritance documents. Photographs proving his family's ownership of the properties. Bank records. Legal agreements. And beneath everything else, a handwritten confession. Oliver picked it up carefully. The confession described how the properties had been transferred illegally, using forged signatures and manipulated records. It named the people involved. Oliver read every line. Then he reached the final page. His eyes stopped. At the bottom was a name he knew, a name that belonged to his own family. For several seconds, Oliver simply stared at it. He remembered family gatherings, old arguments, and the people who had always insisted his father had left nothing behind. Suddenly, memories that once seemed meaningless began connecting. Someone close to Oliver's father had known about the inheritance. Someone had known where the properties were. Someone had helped make them disappear. Oliver's hands trembled as he lowered the confession. The person responsible wasn't a stranger. It wasn't some distant businessman. It was family. The realization hurt more than the threats ever had. His father had spent years protecting the truth from the very people he should have been able to trust. Oliver looked at the documents again. For the first time, he understood why the secret had survived for so long. His father hadn't been hiding wealth from Oliver. He had been hiding it from them. Oliver didn't wait long. The next morning, he confronted the family member whose name appeared on the confession. For years, Oliver had believed this person had simply been distant, cold, and strangely interested in his father's affairs. Now he understood why. At first, the man denied everything. Then Oliver placed the confession on the table. The denial disappeared from his face. Silence filled the room. Finally, the truth came out. Years earlier, Oliver's father had discovered that someone he trusted was secretly trying to seize control of his properties. Forged documents had been prepared. Transfers had been arranged. The plan was to make it appear that Oliver's father had willingly surrendered everything. But his father discovered the deception before it was complete. He knew that fighting publicly could expose the properties and allow the family member to destroy the remaining evidence. So he chose another path. He moved the original records. He created the hidden compartments, and he structured the inheritance so that Oliver would eventually become the rightful beneficiary. The family member believed the plan had worked after Oliver's father died. The evidence was supposedly gone. The inheritance seemed erased. For years, nobody knew where the truth had been hidden, until Oliver lost everything. His eviction had never been connected to the inheritance. There had been no secret plan forcing him into the trailer. It had simply been the worst moment of his life. And somehow, that terrible moment had brought him directly to the place his father had chosen to protect the truth. Oliver placed the final document on the table. "You thought it was gone," he said. The family member stared at the papers. For the first time, Oliver saw fear in his eyes. Not fear of losing money, fear of being exposed. The man realized that the evidence was no longer buried behind walls. It was in Oliver's hands, and Oliver wasn't the powerless man who had arrived at the trailer months ago. He finally had the truth. Now he only needed to make sure the world believed it too. Oliver could have accepted the money. It would have been easier, but after everything his father had sacrificed to protect the truth, Oliver refused to let the evidence disappear behind another private agreement. He took the documents to court. The legal battle lasted months. The forged signatures were examined. The dates were compared against medical records. The original property documents were authenticated. Every piece of evidence Oliver had discovered behind the trailer walls was carefully presented. Then came the document that changed everything. The original inheritance agreement. It established Oliver as his father's rightful primary beneficiary. The opposing side tried to challenge it, but the evidence was overwhelming. One by one, the false transfers collapsed. The properties that had been taken through deception were traced back to Oliver's father. And finally, the court recognized Oliver as the rightful owner of the recovered assets. The room remained silent as the decision was read. Oliver barely moved. Months earlier, people had looked at him and seen a broke, evicted father sleeping inside a ruined trailer. Now those same people watched as he reclaimed what had been taken from his family. But Oliver didn't feel victorious. Not yet. His thoughts returned to those cold nights. He remembered the rain dripping through the trailer roof. He remembered holding the blanket over his child while pretending everything would somehow be okay. He remembered the humiliation of eviction. The judgment didn't erase those memories. It gave them meaning. Oliver understood that losing his home had not been the end of his story. It had unknowingly led him toward the truth his father had protected for decades. As he stepped outside the courthouse, Oliver looked up at the sky. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was running from something. He was finally walking toward the life his father had wanted him to have. And somewhere behind him, the people who had once called him powerless were forced to watch him reclaim everything they thought he had lost. Months later, Oliver's life looked almost unrecognizable. His child finally had a safe, beautiful home. But he didn't destroy the trailer. Instead, Oliver restored it. He repaired the roof, replaced the broken windows, and preserved the section of wall where everything had begun. The hidden compartment remained exactly where his father had placed it. It was no longer a symbol of poverty. It was a reminder. Oliver used part of his inheritance to secure his child's future. He invested in the properties his father had protected and rebuilt the family assets. Yet wealth wasn't what made him feel victorious. One evening, Oliver sat beside his child and watched the sunset. "You don't have to be afraid anymore," he said softly. Those words meant more to Oliver than any property deed or bank account ever could. He had finally become the father he had always wanted to be. Later that night, Oliver returned to the restored trailer. He opened the hidden compartment one final time. The documents were gone, but something caught his eye beneath the wooden case. A photograph. Oliver frowned. He had never seen it before. He picked it up and studied the image. It showed his father standing beside the same old property, but something strange appeared in the background. Oliver turned the photograph over. His breathing stopped. Written across the back, in his father's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 words. "This was never the only thing I left you." Oliver stared at the message. He slowly turned the photograph over again and looked at the unfamiliar building behind his father. There was another location hidden in plain sight. Oliver's journey had begun with an eviction. It had ended with an inheritance. But now he understood something unsettling. The fortune he had reclaimed might only have been the first secret his father left behind. Oliver tightened his grip on the photograph. And somewhere beyond those walls, another mystery was waiting. For Oliver, that was more than enough for tonight.